If you see a spider in your bathroom tonight, your reaction is predictable. You might flinch, grab a tissue, or maybe step on it with your shoe. If you're hiking and see a snake coiled on the trail, you step back, wait for it to pass, or take a photo from a safe distance. If the absolute worst happens and you get bitten, you call emergency services, drive to a climate-controlled hospital, receive a targeted vial of antivenom, and go home a few days later. But for 99% of human history, a single encounter with the wrong creature didn't mean an inconvenient trip to the emergency room. It meant an agonizing, slow, and completely unstoppable death. For hundreds or thousands of years, every single one of your ancestors walked through the world completely barefoot. They slept on the bare earth, brushed through dense, unmapped foliage with their naked hands, and reached into dark rock crevices for food. They shared their daily landscape with creatures whose venom could liquefy human muscle tissue, halt a heart in less than 3 minutes, or paralyze the lungs until a person suffocated in total, terrifying consciousness. We are talking about environments teeming with the ancestors of the inland taipan, the funnel-web spider, the cone snail, and the saw-scaled viper. To survive, prehistoric humans couldn't rely on technology, protective gear, or synthetic medicine. They had to rely on something else entirely. And the way they managed to survive rewrites everything we think we know about why our minds, our eyes, and our deepest fears look the way they do today. Let's start with our eyes, because human eyesight is secretly an ancient weapon designed to fight venom. For decades, evolutionary anthropologists wondered why primates evolved such incredibly advanced, highly specialized visual systems compared to almost every other mammal on Earth.
Our depth perception is astonishing. Our ability to distinguish subtle color variations in low-light environments is freakishly sharp, and our peripheral awareness triggers almost instantly. In 2006, an anthropologist named Lynn Isbell proposed a groundbreaking explanation known as the snake detection theory. She argued that snakes and primates have been locked in an intense, deadly evolutionary arms race for over 60 million years. Long before early humans even learned to walk upright, venomous snakes were our primary neighbors and silent killers. The primates that survived to pass on their genes were not necessarily the strongest or the fastest. They were the ones who could spot a camouflaged viper hidden among the dry leaves milliseconds before stepping on it. And modern neuroscience has actually proven that this ancient war is still hardwired inside your brain. Researchers have discovered a highly specialized, ultra-fast neural pathway in the human visual system, centered in a structure called the pulvinar nucleus. This pathway completely bypasses the visual cortex, the part of your brain that consciously processes images and figures out what you are looking at. When a serpentine shape or a cluster of skittering legs enters your field of vision, the signal triggers your amygdala, the brain's emergency panic button, before you even realize the object is there. You jump backward or pull your hand away before your conscious mind even thinks the word snake. That split-second jump isn't an overreaction. It is a literal evolutionary reflex, a survival program polished over thousands of generations of people who didn't get a second chance if they were too slow. But passive neurological reflexes were only a baseline defense. As early humans began migrating out of Africa and into hyper-venomous ecosystems across Asia, Australia, and the Americas, the stakes multiplied.
To understand how they actually survived on the ground day after day, scientists have spent years studying the world's last remaining hunter-gatherer societies, groups that still maintain a deep connection to the original human lifestyle. Consider anthropological studies conducted on the Agta people of the Philippines or the Waorani of the Amazon. The data gathered from these groups is staggering. Among the Agta, researchers found that nearly all adult men had been targeted or bitten by giant snakes or venomous reptiles at some point in their lives, yet the vast majority of them survived. They didn't survive by luck. They survived because prehistoric people possessed an incredibly sophisticated, crowdsourced database of behavioral ecology and indigenous botany that makes modern wilderness survival guides look like children's books. Prehistoric humans didn't just avoid venomous animals, they studied them with obsessive clinical precision. They knew the exact atmospheric pressure and humidity changes that would drive scorpions out of their underground burrows. They could read the microscopic, near-invisible tracking disturbances left by a wandering spider in the dust. They taught their children to read the landscape not as static scenery, but as a living matrix of potential hazards. More importantly, early humans discovered the world's very first pharmacies. Long before the birth of modern biochemistry, our ancestors realized that the natural world provided local antidotes to its own poisons. Through trial, error, and thousands of years of shared oral history, prehistoric groups discovered that certain roots, barks, and leaves contained natural chemical compounds capable of slowing down blood toxins or preventing localized tissue death. They chewed specific plants into binding poultices, applied tourniquets crafted from flexible jungle vines, and used controlled cauterization or suction to limit the spread of venom through the bloodstream. They effectively turned their entire botanical environment into a defensive shield. But humans are not a species that stays on the defensive for long. Eventually, our ancestors did something uniquely human, something completely brilliant and terrifying. They took the deadly weapon of their worst enemies and turned it against them. Archaeologists excavating ancient cave sites in southern Africa have discovered notched bone arrows dating back over 20,000 years that contain distinct chemical residues. When scientists analyzed these residues, they found traces of highly toxic diamphidia toxin derived from beetle pupae alongside snake venom components. Prehistoric hunters realized that while a simple wooden or stone-tipped arrow might only wound a massive, thick-skinned mammal, dipping that arrow into a concentrated mixture of venom transformed it into a lethal one-shot weapon. Instead of tracking an injured mammoth or buffalo for days, a single scratch from a poisoned arrow could paralyze or collapse the prey's nervous system within hours. Prehistoric groups harvested toxins from toxic frogs, extracted venom from defensive insects, and milked vipers to secure their position at the absolute top of the food chain. The very thing that threatened their extinction became the ultimate tool for their survival. So, what killed this ancient relationship? How did we go from being hyper-aware, venom-milking apex survivors to creatures that freeze and panic when a harmless house spider crawls across the living room rug? The answer is incredibly recent. For millennia, humans lived with a healthy, deeply respectful terror of the venomous world. But in 1895, a French physician named Albert Calmette developed the world's very first successful anti-venom by immunizing horses against cobra venom. Around the exact same time, the global mass production of rubber-soled footwear, sealed concrete foundations, window screens, and urbanized landscaping effectively quarantined the human habitat from the wild. Within the span of just a single century, the ancient daily negotiation between humans and venomous creatures was completely severed. We stepped out of the wilderness, put on shoes, built walls, and assumed the danger was gone. But you cannot simply erase 60 million years of evolutionary programming with a few generations of concrete. And this is where the modern psychological twist comes in. Today, phobias of snakes and spiders are consistently ranked among the most common psychiatric phobias on the planet. Think about how bizarre this is from a statistical standpoint. In the modern world, you are infinitely more likely to be killed by a distracted driver, a malfunctioning household appliance, or a falling vending machine than you are by a venomous animal. Yet nobody has a clinical, sweaty-palmed phobia of sedans. We don't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat dreaming about kitchen toasters. We dream about things with scales. We dream about things with 8 legs hiding in the dark. When you feel that sudden irrational jolt of pure panic looking into a dark closet, or when your heart rate spikes because a stray stick on a hiking trail looked a little too much like a copperhead, your body isn't malfunctioning. It isn't being irrational. It is remembering. That sudden surge of adrenaline is the living voice of an ancestor who walked barefoot through the Pleistocene grass, decoded the whispers of the jungle, survived the deadliest toxins on Earth, and passed that exact life-saving panic directly down to you. We built a modern world of glass and steel to escape the poison in the shadows. But the ancient fear remains, a permanent living fossil wired directly into the core of human consciousness.